Hello everyone, this is Kostab here from Inside Stat, and today we are going to talk about iterator functions. So what are iterator functions? Iterator functions, also known as X functions, they are a powerful category of functions that can evaluate an expression row by row, and then it aggregates the results, or whatever value is there, it aggregates it. And the syntax is very simple. All we have to do is call the function. It can be sum, it can be max, average, count, min, max, um, any function that aggregates values. So we'll have the function which will be succeeded by this x, and then it will be followed by the argument table, and then we will have an expression. Let's understand what it is exactly. So this function x is nothing but the aggregation that is to be applied to the calculated rows. So this is the function that will be applied to each and every row. So we are telling Power BI that we want to do a sum or a count or an average or a max or a concatenate, etc. Right. Now the table here, it is the table to iterate through, which means since we are talking about row by row calculations, we'll have to tell this function on which table do we want this function to be applied to. It can be a physical table, for example, we have the sales table. It can be a virtual table as well, for example, a table which we have calculated using filter maybe. So on that filter, we can apply any of these functions, right? So the table talks about the table on which this function will be applied. And then we have the expression. So this expression is, we are telling the sum, what exactly are we summing? Are we summing a measure that we have created? Or are we summing a custom expression? For example, I can come up with a multiplication, a product between retail price and the quantity, right? And I can come up with the revenue for each and every row. So once we have the revenue for each and every row, after getting the product here, we can calculate the sum of that revenue that will give me the total revenue. Okay, enough of the theory. Let's go back to Power BI and put this to use and see how iterator function works. Okay, now in order to drive my point, we'll start with some very basic calculations. So we'll try and cover whatever we have learned till now. So if I go to my table view and I go to the sales data, we have the order quantity here, right? Now I would want to bring the retail price of these products. So we have the product key here. I would want to bring the retail price, and then I would like to calculate the revenue. Okay, now that's not a very good way of going about it, since I'm doing all the calculations at the table level. I would want all the calculations to happen at the measure level. But since I'm trying to show you the difference between how we can calculate the revenue using this approach and the iterator function approach, so let's go ahead and do it. So what I can do, I can go to new column, and since I'm bringing the product price from the product lookup table, if you go to the product lookup table here, and you can see that the product price is here. Now if I go back to the sales table and I click on new column, so I can say retail price. Sorry. And how do I bring in a different column from a different table to a new table? All I have to do is call related, and to related I'll say I need the product price table. Close this. That's it, right? So I have the product price table. Let me put this to 0 maybe. Okay, so I have the retail price now. Now I have the order quantity and I have the retail price. Now all I can do here is I can go to home, click on new column again, and this time I can calculate revenue, right? And then all I have to do is call in order quantity from sales data and take a product with the retail price, right? Click on enter. This is what we get. So I get the revenue here. And now if I go to my report view, and let's say I get in a KPI card here, right? And if I bring in the revenue here, this is the revenue that I'm getting here, right? 24.91 million. And if I want to check it, if I, let's say, I want to bring in a matrix, and to this matrix, let me bring in the product categories. Sorry, it'll come from the categories here, category names, and then in the values, if I put revenue here, look at this. This is the 24.914, and then we have how we have calculated the revenue, right? Let me put this to 0. Okay, there you go, right? So this is just rounding up the value for us. Now, this is one way of going about doing things, which, as I said, not a very efficient way, because for row by row calculations, it takes a lot of time. So if you have a million rows, more than million rows, it'll take a lot of time for the function to calculate or function to do row level operations. Now, another way of going about doing this is using the iterator function. So what does the iterator function do? So instead of doing a table level calculation, just like we calculated revenue here, I would want to create a measure that would also achieve the same, but instead of doing a table level calculation, I'd be ending up creating a measure so that that measure can be used with any other visualization. It is not dependent on that table, right? So now if I go to the measure table, click on a new measure, and this time I call this revenue X, let's say. I'll call this revenue X. And what do I do about revenue X? I'll call the SUMX. Now SUMX needs a table. The first expression is a table. So which table are we referring to? So I'm calling the sales data table. And on this sales data table, now look at this, very interesting. Even if I do not have a revenue column, even if I do not have a price column in the sales data table, I can still do this calculation. How? So first we will call the order quantity. So we have the sales data order quantity, and we will multiply it with, I'll call in related, and from related I will take price, the product price, and let me close this function, enter, and let me put this to 0, and this is already taken care of. So revenue X is here. So if I go here and on add data, click on revenue X, look at this. This is exactly the same value that we got by calculating the revenue at the table level, right? So SUMX would achieve the same thing, but it is much more efficient because now we are able to calculate a measure instead of calculating a new column or doing some table level calculation, which is not very efficient, right? Similarly, we can use COUNTX, we can use AVERAGEX, we can use MINX, MAXX, CONCATENATEX, RANKX. So there are different functions in the iterators series. Please go ahead, do try it out. If you run into any problems, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to help you out. But for this video, this is all I had. Hope you are clear with iterator functions. I'll see you guys in the next video where we'll be talking about time related time intelligence functions, which is again very, very important. So make sure to watch the next video as well. Thank you for watching this video. Bye bye.